Black woman tries to withdraw money and gets accused, but the FBI shows up and greets her in front of everyone. Dorothy Washington took a deep breath before pushing through the bank's glass doors. Her documents were neatly organized in her black purse, just as they had been dozens of times over the last 3 months. Today would be different. She needed to withdraw her accumulated pension to pay for her granddaughter's medical treatment. The manager, Richard Thornton, intercepted her before she even reached the service counter. His eyebrows rose when he saw the amount she had tried to withdraw from the ATM moments earlier. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but for amounts this large, we require special verification," he said, adjusting his navy blue tie. Dorothy showed all her documents: ID, SSN, proof of address, bank statement. Everything was in order, as it always had been. But Richard shook his head with a look of suspicion she knew all too well. "I'll need to confirm the authenticity of these documents with our headquarters. Could you wait over there in the common area?" He pointed to the chairs in the center of the bank. 3 hours passed. Dorothy watched as other customers came in, were served quickly and left. Executives in suits, elegant housewives, young people in expensive clothes, all were helped before her. The security guards, Marcus and Dwayne, began circling the area more frequently, always glancing in her direction. An elderly woman with grey hair sitting beside her got up and moved elsewhere. Then a young man in a dress shirt did the same. Soon, the chairs around Dorothy were empty. She noticed the whispers, the curious stares, the discomfort her presence seemed to cause. The secretary, Brittany, approached the manager and murmured something in his ear. Dorothy caught a few words: forged documents, past cases, call supervision. "Can I speak to the director?" Dorothy asked, rising from her seat. "Unfortunately, Mr. Peterson is in a very important meeting and cannot be disturbed," Richard replied, without even looking at her. That was when the young teller, Tyler, tried to help. He discreetly approached Dorothy and whispered, "Mrs. Washington, I can try to fix this through the system. Your documents are all correct. I don't understand why." "Tyler," the supervisor's voice echoed across the room, "return to your station immediately." The young man lowered his eyes and stepped away, but not before giving Dorothy an apologetic look. She realized there were good people here, but they were being silenced by fear. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Richard returned with an even sterner expression. "Ma'am, I'll need to inspect the contents of your purse. It's standard security procedure for cases like this." "Cases like this?" Dorothy repeated, her voice steady from years of experience. "And what kind of case would that be?" "You know exactly what I mean," he insisted. "Now, please open your purse." "I won't open my purse. There's no justification for this. I'm just trying to withdraw my own pension." Dorothy's refusal made Richard call for more security. Marcus and Dwayne positioned themselves near her, creating a scene that drew even more attention. A well-dressed man in the priority line spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "These people always try to be something they're not. Probably has fake documents." Dorothy's hands trembled slightly as she held her papers. It wasn't fear, it was outrage. 40 years as a teacher, 30 years paying the same bank fees and now being treated like a criminal. "Look, ma'am." Richard looked at the documents. "Mrs. Washington, it's best if you come back another day, when we can verify your situation properly." "I'm not leaving here without my money," she replied firmly. "My granddaughter needs the treatment. I can't wait any longer." The mention of medical treatment made some people nearby whisper, not out of compassion but suspicion, as if it were just another lie to gain sympathy. "You're causing a disturbance," Richard raised his voice. "If you don't cooperate, I'll have to call the authorities." "Then call." Dorothy stood tall, unwavering. "It's my right to withdraw my own money." "Your own money?" he asked with a sarcastic smile. "How would a simple retired teacher have so much saved up? Can you explain that to me?" The word simple echoed through the bank like a slap. Dorothy felt her blood boil but kept her composure. She'd faced worse in her 65 years. "I'm starting to think you might be involved in activities that don't match your profile," Richard continued, raising his voice so everyone could hear. That's when the glass doors opened, and 3 men in dark suits walked into the bank. An immediate silence fell. All the customers turned to look. The security guards tensed. Richard smiled, thinking backup had finally arrived. "They're here for her," he said, pointing at Dorothy. But the lead agent, a man around 40, walked straight to her and extended his hand. "Special Agent Washington," he said respectfully. "It's an honor to work with you." The entire bank went dead silent. Richard paled. The security guard stepped back. The customer who'd made prejudiced remarks tried to hide behind others. Dorothy smiled for the first time that day and pulled a badge from her purse. "Special Agent Dorothy Washington, Federal Bureau of Investigation," she announced for the whole bank to hear. "On a special investigative operation." Richard's legs buckled. Brittany dropped the papers she was holding. Tyler, from the teller's desk, couldn't hide the grin forming on his face. "For the last 3 months, I've worked as a retired teacher in this community to maintain my cover, while investigating reports of discriminatory treatment in financial institutions," Dorothy explained, her voice now firm and authoritative. She pulled a small recorder from her bag. "This device has recorded all our conversations over the past few months, Richard. Your instructions to staff, your comments about certain customer profiles, your biased service practices." The second agent approached Brittany. "We'll need all service records from the last 6 months, and we'd also like to speak with employees about the protocols you follow here." Tyler was the first to speak up. "Agent, I can confirm. We were told to make things harder for certain customers. There was even a list," he glanced nervously at Richard, "a list of problematic profiles we were supposed to watch more closely." "Tyler, you're saying too much." Richard tried to cut in, but his voice trembled. "Actually, he's saying exactly what needs to be said," the third agent replied, jotting everything down in a notebook. Then Director Peterson appeared, a 50-year-old man who had been too busy to see Dorothy until now. He rushed in, clearly alerted by the commotion. "What's going on here?" he asked, trying to take control. "Mr. Peterson, I presume?" Dorothy addressed him. "I'm Special Agent Washington. We were just discussing this branch's discriminatory practices." The director tried to downplay it. "I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. Our employees are trained to follow strict security protocols with all clients." "It's interesting you mention all clients," Dorothy replied, "because I have records here showing how clients of different profiles receive completely different treatment." She pulled a folder from her bag. "For example, last week, an executive withdrew an amount 3 times larger than mine without any special verification. It took exactly 7 minutes from start to finish. Today I waited 3 hours just to hear that my documents needed to be verified with headquarters." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to it. The influential client who had made derogatory remarks tried to slip away discreetly, but was stopped by the second agent. "Sir, we need you to stay and give a statement," the agent said. "I have nothing to do with this," the man protested nervously. "On the contrary," Dorothy turned to him. "You have everything to do with it. Your statements were recorded and will be a key part of our investigation into how this bank treats different types of clients." The man was revealed to be Harrison Campbell, a personal friend of manager Richard Thornton. During his testimony, he admitted to always receiving preferential treatment, even when his documents weren't in order. "Richard always helped me in the private office," he confessed. "Even when I came without an appointment, he made an exception." Brittany, the secretary, began to cry. "I was just following orders," she said between sobs. "The manager told me to take notes on clients when they arrived, appearance, how they dressed, how they spoke. There was a spreadsheet on his computer." "Is this spreadsheet still there?" the first agent asked. "Yes, it's on Mr. Thornton's computer," she replied, casting a pleading look at the manager. Richard tried to defend himself. "This is all a misunderstanding. I was following security protocols set by the institution itself. It's not discrimination, it's precaution." "Then explain to me why a client with 40 years of banking history, a retired teacher with a flawless record, needed special verification while other clients with irregular situations were served normally." Dorothy crossed her arms. The manager had no answer. The investigation continued in the following weeks and revealed a systematic pattern. Black clients, those from lower social classes or with simpler appearances, were consistently directed to slower lines, had their documents scrutinized more strictly, and were often discouraged from making larger transactions. The cruel irony was that these practices cost the bank money. Solid, reliable clients were pushed away by pure prejudice, while others with questionable financial situations, but the right appearance, were given easy credit. During one of the testimony sessions, Dorothy revealed her true story. "I served in the Federal Bureau for 25 years. I retired last year and was invited for this special mission precisely because I had the ideal profile to go unnoticed. I'm a black woman, middle class, with an ordinary appearance. Perfect for testing how institutions treat people like me." She paused, looking directly at Richard. "The amount I tried to withdraw was real. It was my retirement savings from 3 months, money I didn't need immediately. But when my granddaughter was diagnosed with a health condition, I decided to use that reserve for private treatment. A right I earned through decades of honest work serving my country." The emotion in her voice was real. The impact of having her dignity questioned after a lifetime of public service was devastating, but it also revealed how many others faced the same humiliation daily. Tyler, the young teller, became a key figure in the investigation. He provided internal emails where Richard instructed employees on how to filter certain customers. He told us to create bureaucratic hurdles to discourage people who didn't fit the agency's profile, Tyler testified. "Often customers would give up and go to other banks. We lost a lot of money because of it." An older employee, Mrs. Margaret, who worked in the back office, also spoke up. "I saw everything but was too afraid to say anything. I was 60 and needed the job to supplement my retirement. But I couldn't stand the injustice anymore." She revealed that Richard had even instructed security guards to keep a closer eye on customers of a certain profile, creating an intimidating atmosphere. He claimed it was for security, but we all knew it was to pressure them into leaving faster. Marcus, one of the security guards, also testified, "I didn't agree with those orders, but I needed the job. I have young kids. Still, I always tried to be polite to every customer, no matter what instructions I got." The investigation also uncovered that other banks in the area followed similar practices. Dorothy's operation expanded into a broader federal investigation into institutional discrimination in the banking system. During this time, Dorothy continued living in the community where she had spent the last 3 months. She had genuinely worked as a volunteer teacher in a social project, maintaining her perfect cover. The children she taught were shocked to learn their teacher was a federal agent. "Aunt Dorothy, are you like a spy?" asked little Olivia, 8 years old, during one of the final lessons. "I'm someone who believes everyone deserves respect," she answered with a smile. "And sometimes to ensure that we have to do special things." Dorothy's granddaughter, Madison, 17, was initially worried when she found out about her grandmother's operation. "Grandma, you could have gotten hurt if they found out too soon," she said during a visit. "Sweetheart, I spent 25 years handling much more dangerous situations." Dorothy stroked her granddaughter's cheek. "And this time, I was fighting for something even more important. The dignity of all those who suffer in silence every day." Madison's treatment was successful. The money Dorothy withdrew that day covered all medical expenses, giving her access to the best care available. 2 months after the operation, the bank underwent a complete restructuring. Richard was fired along with 3 other supervisors involved in the discriminatory scheme. New protocols for equal service were implemented, with mandatory training on diversity and respect. Tyler, who had the courage to testify against the abusive practices, was promoted to customer service supervisor. Mrs. Margaret received a special bonus and was transferred to a more visible role where she could help implement the changes. "It's amazing how one brave person can transform an entire environment," Mrs. Margaret remarked during the ceremony, introducing the new protocols. The new branch manager was a woman, Jennifer Parker, who had started as a teller 15 years earlier and climbed the ranks through merit. She was chosen specifically for her history of treating all customers equally. "Our goal now is to make this agency a model of respectful and inclusive service," said Jennifer during her first meeting with the team. 3 months later, Dorothy returned to the bank, this time not on a secret mission but as a consultant hired by headquarters to help implement anti-discrimination policies across all branches. The difference was visible. Clients of all backgrounds were treated with the same courtesy. Lines moved in an orderly fashion, without distinctions based on appearance or social class. Employees had undergone intensive training on unconscious bias and humane service. "Special Agent Washington," Jennifer greeted her with a warm handshake. "It's an honor to have you here as our consultant. You can just call me Dorothy now," she smiled. "I'm here as a citizen, helping build a fairer system for everyone." During her consultancy, Dorothy implemented several structural changes: an anonymous evaluation system where clients could report cases of mistreatment, monthly diversity and inclusion training for all employees, and a mentorship program where staff at different levels observed and reported on service quality to ensure standards were maintained. "The most important thing," she explained to the team, "isn't just punishing bad behavior, but creating a culture where it doesn't happen in the first place. We want respect to feel natural, not forced." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. One of the most successful initiatives was the Real Stories program, where employees shared personal experiences with discrimination, building empathy and awareness about the impact of their actions. Marcus, the security guard who had once been instructed to intimidate certain clients, shared his own story. "My father was a construction worker, and when I was little, he'd take me to the bank to deposit his earnings. I saw how people looked at us, like we didn't belong there. I promised myself I'd never make anyone feel that way, but I ended up doing exactly that. Now I understand how wrong it was." Brittany, Richard's former secretary, who had been demoted but chose to stay with the company, also spoke up. "I grew up believing following orders was always right, but I've learned some orders shouldn't be followed, especially when they hurt others. Today, I'm proud to work somewhere that respects every client." The impact of these changes went beyond the bank. Other financial institutions in the area began reviewing their own practices, wary of similar investigations. Dorothy's operation became a case study in business schools and HR courses. 6 months later, Dorothy was attending a national conference on corporate diversity when she received an unexpected call. "Teacher Dorothy?" It was little Olivia, her former student during the undercover operation. "Hi, sweetheart. How did you get my number?" "My mom helped me look it up. I wanted to tell you I won a school prize for an essay about you." Dorothy smiled, her heart warming. "What did you write about?" "I wrote that you taught me anyone can be a hero, even a retired teacher, and that sometimes heroes go undercover to do important things." "Thank you, Olivia. You're a hero too, you know, for believing everyone deserves respect." That call reminded Dorothy of her mission's true purpose. It wasn't just about punishing bad behavior or implementing corporate policies. It was about creating a world where children like Olivia could grow up believing they would be treated with dignity, no matter who they were. 1 year after the bank operation, Dorothy received a special invitation. The agency where it all happened was organizing a ceremony to launch a new social responsibility program. They had created a fund to support underprivileged students in the community, financed with resources that had previously been wasted on inefficient practices. "This program exists thanks to the work of Special Agent Dorothy Washington," Jennifer said during her opening speech. "She showed us that doing what's right isn't just a moral obligation, it also makes good business sense." In the audience were several bank employees, including Tyler, now a supervisor, and Mrs. Margaret, who had become a mentor for new hires. Marcus, the security guard, had been promoted to security coordinator and implemented new humanized protocols for his team. Also present was Harrison Campbell, the client who had made prejudiced remarks on that fateful day. He had become one of the biggest supporters of the bank's social responsibility program. "I'd like to publicly apologize to Special Agent Dorothy," he said when invited to speak. "My comments that day were unacceptable and reflected biases I didn't even know I had. Being part of this program has helped me become a better person. Dorothy stood and extended her hand to him. What matters isn't the mistake we make, Harrison, but what we do to fix it. You chose the path of change, and that deserves recognition. The most moving moment of the ceremony came when a plaque was unveiled in the bank's main hall. It didn't mention any specific names, but honored the quiet heroes who fight for justice in our society. So many people go unnoticed doing important work, Dorothy said in her speech. This plaque isn't just about me. It's about all the teachers, civil servants, and workers in every field who dedicate their lives to making a difference. And especially about those who have the courage to speak out against injustice, even when it's hard. She looked at Tyler in the audience. Without this young man's bravery in telling the truth, none of this would have been possible. He risked his job to do what was right. That's the kind of heroism that truly changes the world. After the ceremony, Dorothy was approached by a young journalist who wanted to write a story about the operation. Special Agent Dorothy, what stood out to you most in this experience? Discovering that most people want to do what's right, she answered thoughtfully. The problem is that flawed systems sometimes make good people choose poorly. When we change the systems, people naturally make better choices. And what's your next project? Dorothy smiled mysteriously. I can't share details, but I can say there are many other places where people are judged by appearance instead of character. My work is far from over. In truth, Dorothy was already planning her next operation. She had received reports about discrimination in public hospitals, where patients from different social classes received unequal treatment. At 65, she had no plans to stop. Grandma, don't you think you've done enough? Madison asked during a family visit. Her granddaughter had fully recovered and was about to start college. Sweetheart, as long as there's injustice in the world, there will always be work to do, Dorothy replied, hugging her. But don't worry, now I know I'm not alone in this fight. I have a whole team of people who believe in change. She wasn't just referring to her fellow federal agents, but to everyone who had transformed during the process. Tyler, Mrs. Margaret, Marcus, Jennifer, and even Harrison. Each of them had become a multiplier of change in their own environments. 2 years after the initial operation, Dorothy received impressive data about the impact of her work. The banking network had implemented anti-discrimination policies in over 200 branches across the country. Customer satisfaction rates had risen significantly, and interestingly, profits had too. When we treat every customer with respect, we uncover business opportunities that used to go unnoticed, the regional director explained during a results presentation. More importantly, hundreds of employees had gone through diversity training and carried those lessons into their personal lives, creating a ripple effect in society. Little Olivia, now 10 years old, still corresponded with Dorothy. In one of her letters, she wrote, "Aunt Dorothy, today I helped a new girl at school who was being ignored by the others because she's different. I remembered what you taught me about treating everyone with respect. Now she's my best friend. Thank you for teaching me to be a hero too." Those words touched Dorothy's heart deeply. She realized the true success of her mission wasn't in official reports or institutional changes, but in inspiring a new generation to act with dignity and courage. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, 3 years after that tense day at the bank, Dorothy was at home preparing a special lunch. She had invited everyone who had been part of her journey of transformation: Tyler and his family, Mrs. Margaret, Marcus with his young children, Jennifer, and even Harrison with his wife. "You know, Dorothy," Mrs. Margaret said while helping in the kitchen, "sometimes I think about how our lives used to be. I spent my days pretending not to see the injustices. Now, I wake up every day knowing I can make a difference." "That's the greatest reward of all this," Dorothy replied, seasoning the salad, discovering that each of us has the power to change the world around us. During lunch, the children played in the backyard while the adults talked about their current projects. Tyler had created a financial literacy program for underprivileged youth. Marcus was giving talks at schools about combating bullying. Jennifer had become a mentor to other women in the banking sector. "What amazes me," Harrison said, "is how one person can impact so many lives. I completely changed my worldview after that day." We all had that capacity for transformation within us, Dorothy observed. Sometimes we just need a situation to wake us up to our own strength. By evening, when everyone had left, Dorothy sat on the porch with coffee and reflected on the journey. Her next mission would begin the following week, this time investigating disparities in medical care. At 68, she was more determined than ever. Madison arrived for a surprise visit, bringing news from college. "Grandma, I've decided on my major," she announced excitedly. "What will it be?" "Law. I want to work in human rights. You inspired me to fight for justice." Dorothy smiled, feeling a wave of pride and fulfillment. "Then our family will have 2 generations of justice fighters," she said, hugging her granddaughter. "Actually, 3, Madison corrected. "My daughter will grow up knowing she should stand up for what's right too." That night before bed, Dorothy wrote in her personal journal, "Today marks 3 years since that day at the bank that changed so many lives. I realized that no matter how old we are, we can always choose to make a difference. The world is full of good people waiting for an opportunity to show their true nature. Sometimes, all we need is the courage to take that first step." She closed the diary and looked out the window. Somewhere in the city, people were facing injustices, waiting for someone brave enough to stand up for them. Tomorrow would be a new day of possibilities. The story of Dorothy Washington spread far beyond the borders of her town. She was invited to speak at universities, companies, and government organizations. Her undercover investigation methods became a model for similar operations across the country. But for her, what mattered most was still the individual impact on every person she crossed paths with. Like young Olivia, now a teenager, who had become a student leader at her school, promoting campaigns against prejudice. Or Tyler, who had started his own business based on principles of equality and respect. 10 years after that fateful day at the bank, Dorothy had retired from field operations, but continued working as a consultant and speaker. During an international conference on human rights, she was asked about her legacy. "What advice would you give to people who want to make a difference but don't know where to start?" a young student in the audience asked. "Start where you are, with what you have," she replied. "You don't need to be a federal agent or have special powers. Every act of kindness, every moment we choose to treat someone with dignity, every time we find the courage to speak out against injustice, we're changing the world." Heroism lies in the small, everyday gestures. After the talk, an elderly woman approached Dorothy. "My name is Ruth. I wanted to thank you for your work. My daughter works at that bank where it all began. She tells me how much the environment has changed, how proud she feels now to work there. It's had a positive impact on our whole family." Encounters like this happened often. Dorothy discovered her story had touched thousands of people she'd never even met. Employees at other companies had used her courage as inspiration to report wrongdoing in their own workplaces. One special afternoon, Dorothy received an unexpected visitor. It was Richard Thornton, the former manager who had been fired after the operation. She hesitated for a moment before opening the door. "I know I don't deserve your time," he said humbly, "but I wanted to apologize in person and tell you how my life has changed." Dorothy invited him in. Richard looked like a completely different person, thinner, with graying hair, but with a look in his eyes she recognized, the look of someone who had learned an important lesson about himself. "After I was fired, I went through 2 very difficult years," he confessed. "No one in the financial sector would hire me. I had to take a hard look at who I was and what kind of person I wanted to be." He paused, clearly emotional. "I started volunteering at an organization that helps the homeless. That's where I truly understood the impact of my prejudices. I met incredible people I would have judged by appearances, people with extraordinary stories and dignity I never had." "And now?" Dorothy asked. "Now I'm the coordinator of that organization. We won a national award for social responsibility last month. I've found that the most rewarding work of my life is helping people society has cast aside." Richard pulled a photo from his pocket. "This is my team. Every one of them has a story of resilience. I've learned more about leadership and respect from them than in my entire banking career." "Why did you come to tell me this?" she asked, curious. "Because I know that without that operation, I would never have discovered who I truly am." You didn't just investigate discriminatory practices. You saved my soul from becoming a person I would have hated to be." Dorothy Washington fell silent for a moment. This was a dimension of her mission she hadn't anticipated, the power to transform even those who initially seemed like the villains of the story. "Thank you for sharing that with me, Richard. It takes courage to admit our mistakes and work to make things right." "I'd like to do something more," he said. "I want to help with your work. I know the banking system inside out and can spot problematic practices that might go unnoticed by an outsider." Dorothy smiled. Another person had joined the growing network of changemakers around her. "We have a lot of work ahead," she said. "Welcome to the team." In the years that followed, Richard became one of Dorothy's most valuable collaborators. His expertise in the financial sector, combined with his newfound perspective on social justice, led to several successful investigations across different institutions. Their story became a powerful example of how redemption is possible when people are genuinely willing to change. Richard often accompanied Dorothy to speaking engagements, sharing his own version of events and proving that it's possible to learn from our mistakes. "Special Agent Washington taught me that there are no bad people, only people who make bad choices," he would tell audiences. "And it's never too late to choose to be better." 15 years after the bank incident, Dorothy was celebrating her 80th birthday, surrounded by a chosen family that had grown far beyond blood ties. Present were not only Madison, now a renowned human rights lawyer, but also everyone whose lives she had touched over the years. Tyler, now a successful entrepreneur, had founded an organization offering microloans to marginalized business owners. Mrs. Margaret, retired, spent her time teaching banking skills to people in vulnerable situations. Marcus had become the security director of a major company and implemented humane protocols across the organization. "Aunt Dorothy," said Olivia, now a 25-year-old with a degree in social psychology, "do you know the greatest gift you've given us?" "What's that?" "You showed us that each of us has the power to be the hero in someone else's story. You don't need superpowers or an important title, just the courage to do what's right." Olivia had followed in Dorothy's footsteps in a way, working with marginalized communities and developing programs to combat unconscious bias. "Actually," Dorothy replied, looking around the room full of loved ones, "you all gave me the greatest gift. You showed me that a life dedicated to justice isn't just about punishing wrongs, but about planting seeds of kindness that grow and multiply in places we never imagined." During the celebration, Madison announced she was writing a book about her grandmother's story. "It's not just about that day at the bank," she explained. "It's about how one person can create ripples of change that spread across decades and generations." "What's it called?" Richard asked. "Invisible Heroes: How Ordinary People Change the World," Madison answered. "Because Grandma's real lesson is that we all have heroism inside us, waiting for the right moment to shine." The book would go on to become a bestseller and inspire a new generation of social activists. But on that birthday night, Dorothy was thinking of something much simpler and deeper. "Do you know what the greatest miracle of all this is?" she said, raising a glass of lemon water. She never drank alcohol. "It's realizing that when we fight for the dignity of others, we find our own dignity. When we defend the humanity of others, we discover our own humanity." Everyone raised their glasses in a silent toast. "To Dorothy Washington," said Jennifer, "who taught us that true leadership is serving others." "To our invisible heroine," added Marcus, "who showed us that real strength comes from compassion." "To our eternal teacher," Tyler finished, "who taught us the most important lesson, that everyone deserves respect." That night, after everyone had left, Dorothy sat in her favorite armchair with a photo album. There were pictures of all the people who had crossed her path, all the lives she had touched, all the transformations she had witnessed. On the last page of the album was a photo of the bench where it all began, but now with a new sign at the entrance: Dorothy Washington Humanitarian Service Center. She had protested the tribute, but the community had insisted. Next to the photo was a letter from little Olivia years ago, her childish handwriting still visible. "Aunt Dorothy, when I grow up, I want to be an invisible heroine like you." Dorothy smiled, closed the album, and looked out the window. Somewhere in the city, people were facing injustices, waiting for someone to have the courage to stand up for them. Elsewhere, people like Richard, Tyler, Olivia, and so many others were carrying on the work of building a fairer world. Her mission had become a movement, and even when she was no longer here, she knew the work would continue through all the people who had learned to be invisible heroes in their own lives. She opened her journal one last time and wrote, "Today I realized that true success isn't measured by the operations I completed or the injustices I corrected. It's measured by the number of people who now believe they can make a difference. It's measured by the children who grow up knowing they deserve respect and must respect others. It's measured by the hearts that were changed and the minds that were opened. My greatest achievement wasn't being a special agent. It was being a seed of kindness that sprouted and multiplied in gardens I've never even seen. It was discovering that heroism isn't found in grand actions, but in the daily courage to choose kindness over indifference, justice over convenience, love over fear. And now, at 80 years old, I can say with certainty, a life lived in service to others is a life truly fulfilled. It doesn't matter where we start or what obstacles we face. What matters is the choice we make every day to be a force for good in the world." Dorothy closed the journal, turned off the lights, and went to sleep knowing she had fulfilled her purpose. Outside, the city slept peacefully, but somewhere, someone was deciding to stand up for a co-worker against an injustice, or to treat a stranger with unexpected kindness, or to find the courage to do what was right. Dorothy Washington's legacy would continue to live on through every act of bravery, every gesture of kindness, every moment someone chose to be an invisible hero in another person's life, and that, she knew, was more powerful than any special operation she could have ever carried out alone. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story of courage and transformation. Do you believe we all have an invisible hero inside us? Have you ever witnessed or performed an act of justice that made a difference in someone's life? Share your thoughts in the comments about how each of us, in our own way, can contribute to a fairer and more respectful world. Thank you for joining us on this inspiring journey. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories that inspire positive change.